Good morning, everybody. How is everyone doing on this Thursday morning? Just so you know that you are in the right place, today is your business strategy, how to analyze options in the new normal and create an actionable plan. Now, this is a little bit different from what we usually run, which is more to do with the legals, but we decided to partner with John Courtney, the CEO of Boardroom Advisors, to bring you guys something that you can use as the market starts to normalize. We will be waiting a few minutes for kind of the stragglers to join, but in the meantime, I will let John introduce himself to you.
Thanks very much, Isabella, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Business strategy, how to analyze options in the new normal and create an actionable plan. So as Isabella says, I'll just give you an intro while we're waiting for the stragglers. Boardroom Advisors, we provide part-time executive directors, that is commercial directors, operations directors, managing directors, part-time or interim, and we do that nationally. We've got 14 regional directors and 60 advisors. All have, well, some have grey hair, some have none, but they're all very experienced. And that's end of the advert. I was very lucky to train as a strategy consultant back in the day. I'm a serial idiot. This is my seventh business, and I trained as a strategy consultant after about my third or fourth, I can't remember now. I think I'm 109 really. Listen, I learned a lot of stuff there that I wish I'd known in my earlier businesses. I'm going to share some of that with you today. I'm going to share some tools that you may know already, I'm bound to know already actually, but just a refresher, and some that we've crafted ourselves. The idea is that this is it's a terrible situation, but it's also an excellent opportunity, and good entrepreneurs recognize an opportunity, and it's how to plan your way out of the current situation, and be as effective and efficient as possible. So that's the plan. Right, let's plow on with the slides.
So everyone who has just joined, just so you do know, this is John Courtney from Boardroom Advisors, and he will be taking you through, in his years of 7 businesses of experience, how to prepare post-crisis. So without further ado, let's officially start. John, it is over to you. Just if the internet does wobble for a few people and they're saying it in the right, just turn off your camera, and it means that everything is diverted to what you're actually saying. But if there are no issues, then I'll leave you to it, and yeah, let's get cracking.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Isabella. Just to flag up to you that there are some free downloads available on creating actionable plans, and I'll be showing you those at the end of the webinar. Okay. So with no further ado, let's just have a quick whiz through the slides. Well, listen, we advise lots of companies, both those funded and those perhaps have been more established for a long time. And we look at some of these key issues when we're discussing it with them. How do you discuss strategy, and who's responsible for it? How do you analyze it? Do you do it yourselves? Do you do it with a board advisor or a non-exec director or a consultant? Or strategy, can well be done internally, can also be done with some external advice and assistance. And so we just go through a little checklist like that just to see where everybody stands. We also go through this checklist really. Why look at strategy? Isn't it dry, boring, and dusty? Actually, no. Bits of strategy are really exciting, but it gives your organization a direction, and it allows you to plan it out. And we're going to go through some of those planning tools today. An old chestnut that you'll all know, which is SWOT analysis. We're not going to spend long on it, but we are just going to whiz through it briefly because it's very useful. In my book, we're going to look at also something I learned when I was a strategy consultant, which is most analysis, which is vaguely similar to OKRs, if people are familiar with that. Both are useful. Many of these tools are useful. And we're also going to look at a tool that we've developed ourselves, which is a crisis assessment, kind of handy in the current situation, but can apply to many. And really, strategic direction is what a board is there for. It's not there for day-to-day management issues. That's for a management team or a management board, or however you're structured. But the board of a company is there for strategic direction. Where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And how is the best course that you're going to chart to get from A to B? Okay, so right, so just a quick whiz through SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Strengths and weaknesses internal, so that's things within inside the company. Opportunities and threats, things external to the company. So something like perhaps a perceived weakness of financial strength would be an internal weakness. Perhaps the threat from COVID would be an external threat, also could be an external opportunity. And things can be both opportunities and threats, can be both strengths and weaknesses, because there are always two sides to a coin. So when we're drawing this out on a board, on a whiteboard, or whatever it is, often we're flipping through the charts, talking about the weakness, but then what's the flip side of it? Can that also be looked at as a strength? And SWOT analysis, I find, is really, really useful for one main purpose, and that's getting all the issues out onto the table. It doesn't do anything with them, but it's really useful to get them out on the table. The best format we've discovered is not sitting in a darkened room with a pen and piece of paper or a Word document, but instead better done in a small group with a flip chart, whiteboard, whatever, and brainstorming. Nobody coming with preconceived ideas, nobody having prepared it earlier, but actually just doing it raw, because things come from the top of the head. And people, you don't go round the room, but you let people shout out or say out as they come, and other people's ideas lead further people to then think about different ideas and put their hand up and get those on the board as well. So useful done as a group, and with brainstorming rules applying. So that is no criticism, no analysis or discussion, at least not at the beginning. It's all top of the head. Don't care if it's left field. Get it up on the board until you've run dry. Do all your strengths, do all your weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and then you've got 4 lists of things. Try not to analyze them until you've got all 4, because, as I say, things will be part strengths and part weaknesses, perhaps. And then start to do a little bit of analysis. Have a look at perhaps the weaker points that have been made, but if you join a couple of them up together, perhaps they become a stronger point. Perhaps some discussion, and perhaps knocking out some things that aren't big issues. What you're trying to get to at the end of the day is the big issues, the big strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Never mind the long list. You really want to say, what are the core ones, and go through and get people to stick their hand up or asterisk on the board or whatever it is, so you know what the core, the big issues that need to be tackled. Because while SWOT has a weakness in itself in that it doesn't do anything with these things, we want to be able to use most analysis in order to take the core issues here and do things with them. And that's why it's useful, not in itself, but in conjunction with most analysis, or as I said earlier, with OKRs. So there is a download, which I'll flag up now, which you'll be able to get access to. I'll show you how to do at the end of the slides. We're going to come back to that in a minute. One of the things also to have a look at, this is our crisis assessment tool. And when you've done a SWOT analysis, one of the things that's useful is to go through this particular tool. It's just a series of questions, really. And then perhaps amend your SWOT, or add to it, or change it, depending on what the answers are. So how does this work? It's like an onion, you're peeling away layers. So first of all, defining the crisis. What actually is it? And what do you think is likely to change in the world, or the world as a whole? So just an example, one of the things that's that has already changed, and perhaps will continue to change for a time being, is reduced international travel. So just an example. And what's likely to change in your industry? You're going down the layers, as it were. How does this affect you? Not just international travel, but the other things that are changing or may change in the world. You have to be a bit of a crystal ball gazer, I know, but it's better that than not doing. This is planning, and planning is really educated guessing. You know, sometimes people have said to me, well, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. No, but you can make an educated guess. You've been in the industry a while. If you're not sure, if you're not certain, put your best guess down, because that's better than not planning. And then how will those changes affect your revenue streams? Will it create new ones? Will it cut off some revenue streams? Will it dilute them? Will it increase them? And what about your value proposition? So value proposition, I think, is one of the core issues in a business. You should be able to say very clearly in one sentence what it is that you provide that's different to your target audience than your competitors. And how will your value proposition change? Will it change? It might not. Some have completely changed. There was one company supplying food to companies. And then, of course, lockdown came and they couldn't, you know, there weren't companies there to supply. So they started supplying to people's homes. Now people are going back out of lockdown, and they're switching back again. So how will it change your value proposition? How does it make you different than others? And how will it alter your customer segments and your relationships? Are you going to be selling to the same people? Are you going to be dealing with those people in the same way? And these are all obvious questions, but it's worth just going through them one by one, writing down the answers, because sometimes it really makes a difference, and you can discover things. So to continue, how will it alter your distribution channels and your partners? Are you going to be selling more direct? So example would be grocery shopping. Much, you know, people now who didn't use grocery shopping have now tried it, love it. They're like Tesco and Co are likely to do a great deal more. And what about your resource needs? Staffing, offices, obviously. This is an issue that's being talked about. You know, are you going to need less staff, more people working from home? Do you need an office at all? Boardroom Advisors, we are completely virtual. We have always been completely virtual right from the very beginning. And it, you know, we now know, we all know now that being virtual, it's different, but you can, you know, there's not much you can't do. We hold strategy meetings with clients. We do workshops. We run board meetings. We do all this virtually. Of course, we do go to clients' premises and run them face to face as well. And what about your What about your cost structure? You know, how is that going to be affected? So just a series of questions, and again, there's a download, which is just a simple fill-in sheet, but it's, you know, it's handy, and I'll show you where that is at the end of the slides. That's the crisis strategy assessment. So you've done your SWOT analysis, you've double-checked it with the crisis strategy assessment. You've amended the SWOT as possibly as a result. So you've now got issues, and then it's taking them on and doing things with them. And so one of the things I learned, probably the main thing I learned at strategy school, was most analysis. Really thorough, really efficient, and most, starting from left, going round clockwise, most stands for mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And it sounds a little simple like SWOT, right? But actually, it's kind of a bit more complicated and a bit more involved than that. So with mission, we're talking about the company's business purpose. We're not talking about this isn't a vision statement. This isn't anything else. It's hard brass tacks, I suggest, is the best way of doing this. So first of all, you choose a time scale. 1 year is a good time scale, and doing this process, you know, doing a SWOT analysis, doing a most analysis, if there's a crisis, doing the crisis tool as well, annually is really good, and people often leave it, but best done regularly. So what is the business mission? If you choose a timescale, a year, 2 years, 3 years, or even 2 timescales, 1 and 3 years, is quite common, because people want something relatively short term and something a bit further ahead. The days of doing 5 and 10 year plans have gone forever, because the world just moves too quickly these days. But having, you know, what is it you want to achieve in terms of sales and profit? Keep it simple. Don't think about products and territories and staffing, and, you know, don't go into the vision stuff and want to be the best here. And so keep it simple. Business mission. What do you want? Well, first of all, what have you got? Where are you in terms of your sales and your profit currently? So be on firm footing. We did a workshop recently with a client, and we went around the room. There were 4 of them, four people from the company in the room, and they all had a different idea about what their current sales and profit were going to be. So make sure you're on firm footing, and then project forward. And don't worry that it's an educated guess, because that's what it has to be. So in a year's time, in 3 years' time, where is it you realistically want and hope and expect your sales and profit to be? And you know, it should be realistic and achievable. But the size at which you do this, the size at which you want to grow, determines the volume of things you're going to do later on in the most analysis. So if, for example, you want to grow by 1% over 3 years, give you a silly example, then actually you don't need to do very much. You just kind of need to hang on to what you've got, which is possibly quite the right thing to do. But if however you want to increase by 50% in 12 months, my gosh, you're going to have to do a lot. So further down the line in your objectives and strategies and tactics, you're going to have to move some big boulders and do some big things. So the speed at which you want to move, and I'm not persuading you to move quicker, it's just realize that, you know, the speed at which you want to grow, if that's what you want to do, determines things down the line. So that's kind of setting the mission. And often in a workshop situation, we probably spend 50% of the time on the mission. That sounds crazy, but actually getting everybody around the table to agree, A, where they are now, and then B, where they're going to be, is quite tricky. People are different ages, they have different agendas, they have different perceptions. And so getting consensus around the table, or at least compromise, is essential before you move on. Otherwise, everything's built on sand. And then once you've agreed that, then what are the objectives? What are the key goals that help achieve the mission? Now, it's really difficult to think of those off the top of your head. So what you do is you go back to the SWOT analysis, or even the amended SWOT analysis after crisis assessment. And you say, well, okay, what are the really big issues here? Perhaps start with weaknesses and opportunities, because those are probably the cause. You know, what are the big weaknesses that if we want to get to our mission, what are the big weaknesses that we really have to fix, or we're just not going to get there? So that's why getting a sense of scale, size, priorities really of each of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is essential, because you don't want too many objectives to handle. If you have a big long list of things, you'll never get through it. So you want to get, let's pick a number, 6-ish. It doesn't have to be an exact number, but you don't want 15, because it's just too much. You won't get through it, you'll get disillusioned, get disheartened, and you'll also be spending time on the smaller issues. Spend time on the big issues. So, you know, if it's a couple of strengths, sorry, let's start again. If it's a couple of weaknesses, a couple of opportunities, one strength you really have to hang on to, one weakness you really have to fix. You know, it's just, you've got half a dozen or so. It's not an exact number. And then, so you're going to take let's take the example I used briefly earlier. So perhaps there's a perceived weakness of financial strength. So how are you going to rephrase that as an objective? And it's just turning it round. So I'm making this up off the top of my head. So if so the objective might be to create a better perception of our financial strength. Okay, but then you need to add a which will at the end. Which will what? You know, what's the reason for doing that? Why are you tackling this particular thing and making it an objective? Well, which will perhaps take us into bigger enterprise clients. And then you've got a reason for doing it. If you can't work out a which will, then perhaps you're not tackling the right one. There must be a good reason for it to appear on your half a dozen or so objectives. So, in summary, on objectives, you're going back to your SWOT or amended SWOT. You're taking the big issues, mainly around weakness and mainly around opportunities, and you're converting them to an objective by turning it round and adding a which will to give it a sense of purpose. And then for each of those objectives, each of them, you need to drill down, because you haven't actually done anything yet. You just, you know, the statements of intent, there's nothing more than that. And the great thing about most analysis is that it actually drives action. And at the end of the day, everything on the tactics at the far end is going to appear on people's task lists. And that means it drives it forward. So just going back to objectives, for each of those objectives, you want to look at strategies. And strategies, as it says on the slide, are options to achieve the objective. What are the options? You're not trying to come up with the perfect answer here. You're just, again, brainstorming in a group. What are the options? If we want to, let's go back to the example, if we want to change the perceived weakness of our financial position, what are the options? Okay, go around the room. What are the options here? What could we do to change that perception? It might not be a reality. It might just be a perception. Well, we could get some funding in. We could get perhaps a part-time finance director or a full-time finance director. You know, it's options. and you're brainstorming those options, and then you're again not discussing them until you've got the list, because you need to choose one or possibly two strategies to actually implement. So which are the best options? You don't know for sure. Best guess around the table. What does everybody think? Perhaps you might choose two. Perhaps you might choose to go and get some funding, and at the same time you might choose to get a part-time finance director, and you're going to pursue both strategies. Okay, that's just what we're going to play with for now. For each of those strategies, you need to drill down into tactics, because this is what puts it on people's task list. So who's going to own it? Who's actually going to have the armband for raising funding? Are you going to, is your chairman going to do this? Are you going to get in a non-exec director or an advisor? Of, somebody has to hold the armband, and actually that somebody has to be internal. So even if it's a, you're going to get a corporate finance company in to help you, somebody internally, perhaps the chairman or the CEO, has to be responsible, has to have that armband. Because the tactics, so he has the armband, so somebody has responsibility, and what's he going to do, and when's he going to do it by, or at least when's he going to start? So if you're going to go looking for funding, so the chairman, let's say, is going to what's the action? Everybody around the room is coming up with ideas. Well, perhaps you're talking to crowdfunding. Perhaps you're talking to, if you're a bigger company, perhaps you're talking to VCs or to angels or whatever. If you're looking for a part-time finance director, who's going to hold that responsibility? Well, perhaps it's the sales director, as an example, and he's going to perhaps look at companies that provide part-time finance directors, or perhaps going to place an advert, and is going to do it by next month. So somebody has responsibility, and there's a time scale, and there's an action, and then everything is going on somebody's to-do list. And then the tactics going anti-clockwise around that circle. So the tactics, if they work, are going to help achieve the strategic objective. And if the strategies work, the objectives are likely to be met. And if the objectives are likely to be met, then it's possible you may well reach or get close to your mission. So everything hangs together from top to bottom and bottom to top. And, most does two things. One is it puts things on people's task list. It drives things forward in action, which is brilliant. And then secondly, because it all ties together from top to bottom, if you get stuck, if something doesn't work, and believe me, something will not work. Quite a few things won't work. Some of the strategies you choose won't come up with the desired results. You don't know for sure. You're choosing your best guess. But when they don't work, then it's just checking, double checking. Are we dealing with the right objective? We've just perhaps chosen the wrong strategy, or perhaps if we nudge this strategy in a direction, perhaps it'll still work. Or no, let's replace the strategy. Well, what else did we discuss? What else was on that flip chart? What were the other options we looked at? Perhaps we should relook at one of those options. Perhaps that's better. You've got somewhere to go back to when things don't go quite right. And if you don't have a structure and a process like this, whether it's this or OKRs, then you've nowhere really to go back to. And you tend to go from objective to tactic with nothing in the middle. And then it's like, well, that part-time finance director was rubbish, and well, we really shouldn't, we're gonna have to live with our perceived financial weakness. No, put a structure in place, and then you've got somewhere to go back to. So that's most analysis, and you can look at it graphically. This is exactly the same content, really, but in a linear fashion. But with triggers in there, so mission, where, and where do you want to go, and the time scale, the objectives from the SWOT, Strategies are just options, and the tactics are tasks and timescales. So that's the most analysis, and the conjunction of those three tools together really gives you a structure and a process on which to analyze strategic direction and hopefully cope with some of the things. As with the other tools, there's most analysis templates there, which are on free download, which I will show you in a minute. Oh, I'm showing you now. Sorry, I've forgotten this slide was next. So this is the Business Strategy Toolkit page on our website, and I'll just show you how to get there. So you go to our homepage. This is the homepage on our website, and you see there's a resources section, and under there there's these tools. And that's the page that you land on, the Business Strategy Toolkit. So just finally, just a couple of slides on why you use advisors. You can do strategy internally, and that's absolutely fine, depending on the size of the business. But even small businesses, using an outside advisor, always recommended. Doesn't have to be us, can be, there's lots of options out there. Why? You get an outside opinion, you get some more expertise, some experience. We always say, oh, guys, some have grey hair, some have none, but they're all very experienced. You get some contacts if you want, for example, to raise funding or find a part-time director, whatever it is. The sheer process of having an advisor and perhaps regularly looking at things means that you plan. Oh gosh, he's coming in next week, we better get down to what we said we were going to do. That's quite common. You get some mentoring and perhaps some training as well. And good advisors, they should have a coaching mentality. It's not precious about holding the information to yourself. It's about sharing it, as we're doing today, and coaching people, helping them to eventually do things without the support. Perhaps some relevant experience of scale-ups if you're in the scale-up marketplace. Somebody who can think long-term. Doing it all internally, people tend to think a little too short-term at times. You need somebody with similar values and a good reputation, obviously. Just ask around and draw up a brief if you can. What is it you're trying to achieve? What role do you want them to have? Is it as an NED, a board advisor, part-time, this? And what's skills and experience? And don't worry, you don't necessarily, people often say, well, I need an expert in my industry. It's not necessarily the best thing. Think about somebody who's at least has a broad experience of your sector and industry, but also has wider experience. That wider experience of different industries will be very useful. Well, I was a management consultant for 10 years, and people who kept me for a while, I did from time to time ask them, what is it you find most use? And most of them said, well, it's because you've got broad experience, you cross-fertilize ideas from one industry to another. So get somebody with some broad experience, and have a clear idea what you want an advisor to achieve, and the timescales for doing that. Be realistic, but just getting an advisor or getting a non-exec without a purpose, without an objective, can lead into some difficulties. So just have some clear goals. And how do you find them? Well, you know some already. You can reach out and have somebody with some experience and are genuinely interested, and you have some chemistry. When you meet them first time, you should sense their excitement. If they're not excited, then perhaps it's not the best place to be. Okay, that's kind of it for the slides. So just last slide up there, that's a graphic of my LinkedIn profile. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. and there's my email and my web address. And Isabella, I think you're sending out my contact details as well, together with a video of what we've just done.
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
right?
So right after this webinar, all of you will be receiving the recording, and clearly, if John is willing, his contact details to get in touch and see what you guys can do with Boardroom Advisors. John, thank you very much. Definitely slightly more business focused than we usually do, but super valuable nonetheless. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask John now? Remember, you can ask him later today when you get his email. I apologize for your inbox, John. The Seed Legals community tends to have loads of questions, which is great. But for now, does anybody have anything they'd like to follow up on? If there's nothing, I think we can all kind of get along with our day, and you guys can get in touch with him when questions do come up, or when you want to, appoint the right person to drive you in that direction. And I think that's something that I will emphasize now. And the reason that we ran this this webinar is because even though you know your sector and you know your business, it is so important, particularly when you're strategizing for something like this, to get outside input that have the experience to grow properly and save you a lot of time, not making the mistakes that you would. So this is not kind of a sale. This is something that's super important for all of you. Do take into account what he said, and then when you are ready to find the right person, definitely head over to Boardroom Advisors. Amazing. Well, I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much, John, and we can call it a day. All right.
Thanks very much, everybody.